Hey guys, in this video we're going to combine what we've done in the last two videos with using variables and order of operations. We're going to put those two things together and learn how to evaluate algebraic expressions. Now what I mean by evaluating an expression is just substituting a given number into an expression for a variable. Okay, and then we're going to simplify our expressions using the order of operations. So let me show you how this works just down here with example number 1. So for our first four examples, actually, examples 1 through 4, we're going to take some algebraic expressions, and I'm giving you that C equals 2 and D equals 5. So what that means is everywhere you see a C in these expressions, you're going to substitute the number 2. Everywhere you see a D, you're going to substitute the number 5. So in number 1, we have 4 times C minus 2 times D divided by C. So I'm going to rewrite this, but everywhere I see a C, I'm going to replace it with a 2. So this is 4, and then I'm going to do a parentheses to mean times. This is 4 times 2 minus 2D. Everywhere I see a D, remember, we're going to put in a 5. So I'll do minus 2 and then a set of parentheses to mean times, minus 2 times 5. And then we'll do our divided by symbol, C, and C again is 2. Okay, so we have 4 times 2 minus 2 times 5 divided by 2. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to do my order of operations, since this is all numbers now, this is all arithmetic, and order of operations says I start inside my grouping symbols. Inside my grouping symbols I just have my 2 and my 5, so I can't really do anything with 2 and 5, so I can move on to exponents. There are no exponents in this problem, so that means I can move on to multiplication and division left to right. So my first multiplication I see is right here at the beginning, 4 times 2. 4 times 2 is 8. So we have 8 minus 2 times 5 divided by 2. Okay, if I move left to right, next I see multiplication here, negative 2 times 5. Okay, so I'm not going to do any subtraction yet. I'm going to keep that 8 where it is, but I'm going to multiply my negative 2 and my 5 to get a negative 10. So I get 8 minus 10, then I've still got my divided by 2. And lastly, I have some division here. So again, I'm going to ignore this subtraction, and I'm going to do my division down here at the end. I have a negative 10 divided by 2, which gives me negative 5. So now we have 8 minus 5, and now we can do our last step. 8 minus 5 is going to give me positive 3. So when I evaluate this expression, I get positive 3 for my answer. Let's try the same thing here on number 2. We have D plus 6 times C divided by 4. So again, everywhere I see a D, I'm going to plug in a 5. So right here at the beginning. And then we have plus 6 times C. So 6, and then I'll do my parentheses times 2. And then divided by 4. Okay, just like the last problem, I don't have anything inside grouping symbols that I can simplify. 2 is just 2. Okay, no exponents, so I'm going to start doing my multiplication and my division left to right. So I'm going to keep my 5 plus, I do have, though, a 6 times 2 I can do. So 6 times 2 is positive 12, so that's going to be plus 12. And then my divided by 4. So 5 plus 12 divided by 4. I'm going to ignore this addition and do my division next. So I have positive 12 divided by 4, which is positive 3. So this becomes 5 plus 3. 5 plus 3 is 8. Okay, for number 3, I have the expression C to the 4th power minus D times 2. So I'm going to plug in again 2 for C and a 5 for D. When I'm plugging in my 2 for C here at the beginning, it is going in for the base. Okay, and that base is part of a power. So whenever you're plugging in a number for a variable and it's part of a power, I want you to use parentheses around it. So this is how I want you to substitute for number 3. You're going to do a set of parentheses here. And then you're going to do your exponent of 4 outside those parentheses, okay? Because this number here that we're plugging in this case it's a 2, is going in for C. c was being taken to the fourth power originally, but I want you to show a set of parentheses there to represent that we're plugging in a number for c. Okay, so we have 2 to the fourth power minus d, which is 5. Okay, so minus d, which is 5, and then our times 2. So just like this. Now we're going to do our order of operations, which says we're going to do what's inside grouping symbols first, and then after we do what's inside grouping symbols, we do exponents. So the first thing I can do for this problem are my exponents. 2 to the fourth power is 2 times 2 times 2 times 2. So if you take 2 times itself twice, you get 4. Times 2 again is 8. Times 2 again is 16. So 2 to the fourth power is 16. So we have 16 minus 5 times 2. Next, I can do my multiplication. I have a negative 5 times 2, which is negative 10. So this gives me 16 minus 10. 16 minus 10 becomes positive 6. Okay, for the next one, we have 40 minus d squared plus c times d times 3. So again, I'm going to use my parentheses anytime I'm plugging in a number into a power. So I'm plugging in or substituting a 5 in for d. So this is 40 minus 5 squared. Make sure you put that 5 in parentheses. Plus, anytime you have multiplication, if you noticed up here in number 1 and number 2, if I'm plugging in for the second number that's being multiplied, I like to use parentheses around it. If you're plugging in for the first number, like in this case I need to plug in a 2 for c, you don't have to put parentheses around that first number. So I'm just going to put a plus 2. But then for my second number, my d, I'm going to put it in parentheses just to show that this is multiplication. So plus 2 times 5 again is d, and then we have a times 3 out here at the end. Okay, so now we're going to do our order of operations. And order of operations, in this case, I need to start with my exponents. Now, here's the reason why that I'm using parentheses around this number here in the power, and why I want you to do that over here for number 3 as well. What this says is I need to take 5 to the second power. Okay, 5 to the second power. 5 squared is just 5 times 5, which is positive 25. Okay, so we're going to put a 25 out here, but then the sign in front of it, okay, is a minus sign. Okay, so it's almost like you have a negative 1 out here being multiplied by 5 squared. Okay, so in the end, even though 5 squared is 25, because you had a minus sign out here in front of these parentheses, I need to put a minus sign down here after I do my exponents. Okay, so you're doing your 5 squared first, 25, but then that minus sign that was out there turns this back into a negative sign. Okay, because it's like you're multiplying a positive 25 again by a negative 1 out here. So just make sure you have a minus 25 here. Okay, watch your signs when you're doing exponents on these problems. I'm going to bring down my 40 right here. So now I have 40 minus 25 plus 2 times 5 times 3. Okay, now that I've done my exponents, I'm going to do my multiplication next. So 40 minus 25, I'm just going to leave that alone. My multiplication step is going to be right here. I've got positive 2 times positive 5, which is positive 10 times 3. From there, my next step is going to be to do my other multiplication. So 40 minus 25, I'm still going to bring that down. And then I have multiplication right here with 10 times 3. 10 times 3 is 30, so I'll put a plus 30 there. And now all I'm left with is addition and subtraction, so now I can move left to right. 40 minus 25 is going to give me 15. So I have 15 plus 30, which gives me an answer of 45. Okay, let's move on to the next set of examples now. This time we're going to change variables. We're going to change numbers. I'm going to let r be equal to 9 for this one, and t is going to be equal to 14. So number 5, I have r times t squared. So what you need to do for this one is you're going to plug in, again, 9 for r. So we'll put a 9 in for that. Okay, then I have times, so I'm going to use my parentheses because this is the second number I'm plugging in. And I'm also taking the t to the second power, so that's another reason why I'm using parentheses. 9 times 14 squared is going to look just like this. Now if I do order of operations, remember order of operations says I do exponents before I multiply. So the part I need to do first is this 14 to the second power. So I'm going to ignore my 9 for a second, just bring that down, and I'm going to do 14 to the second power, which means 14 times itself. Again, you can do this on a basic calculator if you'd like, or if you don't have one with you, you can just write this out by hand. 14 times 14 is going to give me 196. So this is going to be 9 times 196, and then 9 times 196. Again, feel free to use a basic calculator, or you can write this out by hand. 196 times 9. 9 times 6 would be 54. So I have 9 times 9, 81. Add 5, that'd be 86. And then 9 times 1 is 9, plus 8, that'd be 17. So you get positive 1,764. Okay, let's try number 6. For this one, I'm doing r squared times t. So it's going to look similar, but I'm going to get a different answer here because this time I need to put my parentheses here around my r, what I'm plugging in for r, which is positive 9, because that's the number that I'm taking to the second power. So this is 9 squared times t is going to be 14. So this time I'm still going to do exponents first, but this time I'm doing 9 squared. 9 squared is 9 times 9, which is 81. So I've got 81 times 14. Okay, to save myself some time, I've got my iPhone sitting next to me, so I'm just going to use my basic calculator app on that one right there. And so 81 times 14, I get 1,134. Okay, number 7, we have r times t quantity squared. So notice the r times t itself is in parentheses, and then I have a squared there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to substitute 9 for r. So 9 for r. I'm going to substitute my 14 for t. This is r times t, so there's my 14. And then, because I'm using parentheses here for my 14, I'm going to put a set of brackets now. I'm going to turn these grouping symbols into brackets because I need to take this product, 9 times 14, and square it. So this becomes 9 times 14 quantity squared. We're going to start inside our grouping symbols this time. So the first thing I'm going to do here is 9 times 14. 9 times 14 is 126. So I get 126. And when you square 126, that's like doing 126 times 126. I recommend just grabbing a basic calculator for that instead of doing that all by hand. When you square 126, you get 15,876. Okay, and then number 8, we have r squared times t squared. So this time I'm going to plug in 9 for r. I'm going to square that number, and then times, I'm going to plug in a 14 for t and also square that number. So I need to do my exponents first here. In this case, I have 2 sets of exponents. I have 9 squared first, which we know is 81. So 81 times 14 squared. And then I can bring down my 81. I need to figure out what 14 squared is. 14 squared, we already did over here in number 5, is 196. So this becomes 81 times 196. 81 times 196, I get 15,876. Okay, let's move to the next set of examples. So this is 9 through 12. This time we have 3 variables, and we're throwing in some negatives here. M is going to be equal to -3, P is going to be equal to +7, and Q is going to be equal to -4. So my first expression is M times P minus Q. Okay, so I'm going to substitute in a -3 for M, times P, so I'm going to put a set of parentheses here, times 7 is what we're plugging in for P, so times 7, minus Q. Q is -4, so this is where you really need to be careful. We've got subtraction right here, okay, in front of Q, and then for Q itself, we're plugging in a -4. So I'm going to put in another set of parentheses here because now I'm going to have a double negative. I've got the minus sign from the original problem, and I'm also plugging in a negative number in for q. So this is negative 3 times 7 minus negative 4. Be really careful with your signs here when you're substituting. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and follow my order of operations. I'm going to start with my multiplication here in this case, because I can't do anything inside grouping symbols and I have no exponents. So I'm going to do negative 3 times 7 first. Negative 3 times 7 is negative 21. So this is negative 21 minus negative 4. We know from our last unit that minus negative always means plus, so I'm going to rewrite this as negative 21 plus 4. Negative 21 plus 4 is negative 17. Okay, let's look at number 10. We have m times the quantity, p minus q. So I'm plugging in a negative 3 for m. Then I'll do my set of parentheses. I'm plugging in a 7 for p. And then just like the last problem, I have subtraction, and then I have my q, which is negative 4. So I'm going to use another set of parentheses. Negative 4 right there, which means I should probably make this first parenthesis right here a bracket, since I'm using parentheses inside parentheses already. So I'll make these brackets now. So now, order of operations says I need to do what's inside my grouping symbols first. So I'm going to bring down this negative 3 here, and I'm going to do what's inside my brackets. 7 minus negative 4 is the same thing as 7 plus 4. And 7 plus 4 is 11. So this gives me negative 3 times 11. Negative 3 times 11 is negative 33. Okay, number 11, I have m squared minus p times q. So because m is part of a power, it's the base, I'm going to use parentheses around it. I'm plugging in a negative 3 for m. And because I'm plugging in a negative number for this one, okay, my number is actually negative 3, I'm putting the negative sign inside those parentheses. Okay, if you look back over here on number 4, okay, when we did number 4 and I plugged in 5 for D, this minus sign here in front of D wasn't what we were plugging in. We were plugging in a positive 5 here, so that's why I didn't put that minus sign inside parentheses, because the number I was plugging in for D was positive. This is different than the one I'm doing right now. The one I'm doing right now is I'm plugging a negative number in for m, so that's why that negative sign is going inside the parentheses. Okay, so I have negative 3, and then I'm going to put my squared here, minus p, which is 7, so minus 7, times q, which is negative 4. So first step in order of operations here, I'm going to do my exponents. In this case, I'm doing a negative 3 squared. So that means I'm doing negative 3 times itself. Well, if you think about your signs, anytime you do a negative number times a negative number, you know you get a positive number. So negative 3 squared is actually positive, and 3 times 3 is 9, so this becomes positive 9 when we do negative 3 squared. Then I have minus 7 times negative 4. The next step I'm going to do is my multiplication. So I have a negative 7 times a negative 4. Again, a negative times a negative is a positive, so this gives me plus 28. So this becomes 9 plus 28, which is 37. Okay, number 12, we have a problem that's very similar to number 11. There's going to be one slight difference. We have negative m squared minus p times q. So for this one, I'm going to write it exactly like I did number 11, except I have a negative sign already in front of my m. So I'm going to start out with a negative sign here in front of my m. Then I'm going to put my set of parentheses in. And again, I'm plugging in a negative 3. So now I have a negative 3 in here just like I did number 11. So notice I've got a negative sign from the original problem and then also a negative sign from what I plugged in. So again, if you're plugging in a negative, it actually goes in parentheses. If the negative is part of the problem, it doesn't go in the parentheses. You got to be really careful with your signs when you're doing this. Okay, so now I'm going to follow the same steps that I did in the last problem. I'm going to start with my exponents. So I'm going to do negative 3 squared, which again is positive 9. But now I have this negative sign, this one here in black, out in front. So I need to treat, again, that as a negative 1. Okay, so that's like having -1 times +9, which makes this a -9. Okay, so because of this negative sign out in front, this +9 turns back into a -9. And then I've got my -7 times -4, just like the last problem. -7 times -4, again, is +28. So we have -9 plus 28. -9 plus 28 is going to give me 19. Okay, the last problem we're actually going to do in class together to find the area of a trapezoid problem, so don't worry about doing that one right now. We'll do that together. I know there were a lot of examples in this video, so feel free to go back through and watch anything again that you need to, and we will practice this in class the next time I see you. Until then, have a nice day. You're all wonderful people. Take care.